The boardroom was on the 41st floor. I had cleaned it every Tuesday and Friday morning for 6 years, arriving at 4:45 before the building's professional occupants began their day, pushing my cart through the service entrance on the ground level, taking the freight elevator to 41, and spending approximately 90 minutes on the boardroom alone, because the boardroom required a specific standard that the building's facilities manager, a man named Gerald Pittman, communicated in the specific voice of a person who wanted you to understand that the standard was his and that your failure to meet it would be your personal failing and not a reflection of any ambiguity in his instruction. I had never failed to meet the standard. In 6 years, I had not once been sent back to redo the boardroom. On the morning of April the 9th, at 6:53, I was finishing. The table had been polished. The 62 chairs had been wiped and straightened. The windows had been cleaned. The credenza at the far wall had been arranged. The water pitchers had been filled and positioned. The presentation screen had been cleaned of the fingerprints that accumulated on it regardless of how many times I cleaned it, because people touch screens the way they touch things that fascinate them, and screens fascinate everyone. I was on my knees at the far end of the room, cleaning the baseboard that runs along the floor to ceiling windows, when the door opened. I did not look up immediately. The door opened regularly during my work, facilities staff, early arriving executives, the occasional security officer. After 6 years, I had learned that looking up was not always required and was sometimes, in the specific social architecture of a cleaning woman in a corporate building, not entirely welcome. Then a voice cut through the silence. "What are you still doing in here?" I looked up. A white man in his early 40s, in a suit that I recognized as expensive 6 years of cleaning the clothes storage rooms of corporate buildings teaches you that. He had the specific quality of a man accustomed to entering rooms and having those rooms reorganize around his arrival, and he was currently finding the reorganization incomplete because there was a woman on her knees at the far end who had not yet reorganized. I stood slowly. "The meeting starts in 7 minutes," I explained. "I'll be done well before then." He stepped further into the room. "You should have been finished 20 minutes ago." The standard for this room requires approximately 90 minutes. I arrived at 4:45. I am on schedule. His expression did not change. "I don't need your schedule. I need you out of this room." I gathered my supplies. I pushed my cart toward the door with the specific unhurried pace of a woman who has been doing this for 6 years and who has developed the professional dignity of someone who does not scurry regardless of who is watching. As I passed him, his voice followed me. "I'm going to speak to Gerald about this." I said nothing. I went to the freight elevator. I went to the supply room in the basement. I unloaded my cart. At 7:48, Gerald Pittman found me there. "Mr. Harrington felt the timing was unacceptable," he said, looking somewhere past my shoulder. 6 years, and that was the whole of the explanation he offered. I told him plainly that I had been on schedule with the standard timeline for that room. Gerald's expression held the discomfort of a man who knew the truth and was delivering something that contradicted it anyway. "I understand," he said, "but Mr. Harrington is a major client of this building, and his preference has been noted." So I am being terminated because a client did not like that I was still cleaning when he arrived. He had the grace to look ashamed. I'm sorry, Dorothy. This isn't my decision. I know, I said simply. I collected my personal items from the supply room locker. I signed the severance paperwork. I took the bus home. My name is Dorothy Adiz Mensa Williams. I am 58 years old. I have been a commercial cleaning professional for 22 years. I have cleaned corporate offices and hospital corridors and school buildings and government facilities. I have pushed carts through service entrances and taken freight elevators and cleaned boardrooms before the people who use boardrooms arrive in the morning. I have a son. His name is Gabriel Emmanuel Williams. He is 34 years old. He is the founder and CEO of Williams Tech Global, a technology infrastructure company with offices in 11 cities and annual revenue of $612 million. He does not know I am still cleaning for a living. He has not known for 4 years. This is the story of the morning I stopped letting him not know, and what happened when he finally understood what his mother had been carrying. Before the boardroom and before the termination, and before this story reaches the place it needs to reach, I need to take you to the beginning. Not my beginning in its entirety. I am 58 years old, and the full beginning would take longer than this story has space for, but the beginning of the part that matters. The part about Gabriel. The part about what a mother builds in the dark so her child can build in the light. I came to the United States from Ghana in 1991. I was 24 years old. I had a university degree in accounting from the University of Ghana that was not recognized by the institutions I applied to when I arrived. A specific kind of displacement I will not spend too many words on because it is common, and because the words it deserves are more than I can give it here, except to say that the non-recognition of what you spent 4 years building is not a small thing, and it does not become a small thing just because time passes. I had a husband when I arrived. Solomon Williams was a good man who worked in construction and who died of a heart attack when Gabriel was 7 years old, the age that a child is old enough to remember everything and young enough to need everything. What he left behind was a 7-year-old, a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, and a monthly income that required the specific kind of management that is not budgeting but survival arithmetic. I cleaned because cleaning paid, not abundantly, not in a way that produced excess, but cleaning paid reliably and on a schedule, and with a consistency that survival arithmetic requires, and I was good at it the way I am good at most things I commit to thoroughly. I cleaned so Gabriel could go to school, so he could have the after-school tutoring his public school could not provide in sufficient depth for a child whose mind moved at the speed his moved. So he could apply to the specialized high school in Manhattan that required a test and preparation for the test and new clothes for the interview and a Metro card for the commute. I cleaned so Gabriel could have the laptop he needed for the computer science program at that specialized high school. So he could attend State University on a partial scholarship that covered tuition but not housing, not meals, not books, not transportation. I cleaned so Gabriel could graduate. I cleaned so Gabriel could take the risk of his first startup, which failed, and his second startup, which failed more expensively, and his third startup, which became Williams Tech Global. I cleaned all of this into existence, not alone. Gabriel worked alongside it all: jobs in high school, work-study in college, consulting work between startups. He is not a man who was carried. He carried himself. But what I provided was the floor under the carrying, the specific stability of a mother who was always there and always solvent and always managing, which is its own form of carrying even when it is invisible. And it was invisible. I had made it invisible. This is what I need you to understand about that invisibility. I did not hide what I did from Gabriel because I was ashamed. I want to say that clearly and completely. There is no shame in the work that keeps a child fed and educated and capable of becoming what he became. The hiding came from something different: the specific desire of a mother who had watched her son build something extraordinary to not have that building complicated by his guilt about what his building had cost her. Gabriel had asked me, many times in the years since Williams Tech began to succeed, to stop working. He had offered to support me, the specific gesture of a son who understands what his mother did and wants to provide what she once provided for him, which is the most beautiful thing about him and the thing I find hardest to receive. I had told him I was still doing some bookkeeping work, part-time accounting consulting for small businesses. I told him this because I do have a degree in accounting that Ghana gave me and that America did not recognize, but that I never stopped using in the private management of my own household, and that gave the story enough truth to stand on. I had been telling him this story for 4 years. For 4 years, I had been cleaning the 41st floor boardroom of the Meridian Corporate Tower twice a week, while telling my son I was doing bookkeeping. On the morning of April the 9th, I was terminated. And something shifted in me on that bus ride home. It was not the termination itself. Gerald was right that it was not his decision, and I bore him no particular ill will for delivering it. What Harrington did was the act of a person who exercises power casually, without examination, the specific power of a man accustomed to inconveniences being resolved without cost to himself. What shifted on the bus was something different. The recognition that I had been fired from a building I had maintained for 6 years with perfect performance. Fired by a man whose name I did not even know until Gerald said it, and that I was going home to figure out what came next, and that my son did not know this was my life. Not because he would have been unkind about it, because I had protected him from knowing. And sitting on that bus, I asked myself for the first time in 4 years whether the protection was still serving the purpose I had built it for. The answer was no. Gabriel called every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. This had been our pattern for 11 years, since he moved to San Francisco for the third startup that became Williams Tech, and it had not broken once. Not during the Series B funding crunch when he was sleeping 4 hours a night, not during product launches or board crises or any stretch of pressure the company had ever produced. Every Sunday at 7. He called the Sunday after the termination, and I had been sitting with what I was going to say for 4 days. His first question was the one it always was. "How are you, Mom? I need to tell you something," I answered. something I should have told you a long time ago and that I have been keeping from you because I thought I was protecting you. I think I was wrong about that." The shift in his voice was immediate. "Tell me." And so I did. Simply and completely the way I have always delivered things that matter. I told him about the 22 years, about the Meridian corporate tower, about the boardroom on the 41st floor, and the man named Harrington and Gerald Pittman, and the termination that happened in 20 minutes after 6 years of showing up. The silence that followed was long enough that I asked if he was still there. He was. His voice, when it returned, carried the careful quality of a person holding something fragile. "Mom, I need to explain why I did it. Why I didn't tell you. Let me explain first," I told him. "Because the explanation matters and because I need you to hear it correctly. I didn't tell you because watching you build what you built was the thing I worked for. Every morning, every building, every cart through every service entrance. I worked so you could build. And once you started building, I didn't want what I was doing to make you feel that your building had cost me something you needed to repay, because it wasn't a cost. It was the whole point. You were always the whole point." Another long silence. "How long have you followed the company?" he finally asked. "Since the beginning. Every announcement, every funding round, every product launch, every profile. There is a folder on my laptop, a folder with everything. Since the beginning." His next question arrived slowly, as though he were feeling the weight of each word before releasing it. "The building, Mom, Meridian Corporate Tower. Who is the facilities manager?" "Gerald Pittman." "And the man who requested the termination?" "Harrington." "That is what Gerald told me. I do not know his first name." A pause, a breath. "Then I need to ask you something important. Ask it. Are you okay?" The question was so direct and so entirely his, cutting through everything else to the center of what mattered, that I felt it in my chest. "I am okay," I told him honestly. "I am 58 years old and I have been okay through harder things than this. I told you because I wanted you to know, not because I need rescuing." "I know," he said. "But Mom, I need you to know something. Tell me." "Williamsdeck Global has been in acquisition discussions with Meridian Corporate Tower's parent company for 4 months. The room was very still. I was going to close the acquisition next week. I sat with that. I own the building, Mom, or I will own the building in 7 days. Subscribe to Black Diamonds right now. Hit that notification bell immediately. Because this story, this specific story about a woman who cleaned a building for 6 years and whose son bought it, is the reason this channel exists. For every mother who built in the dark so her child could build in the light. For every cleaning woman in every service elevator in every corporate building who is carrying more than the cart she is pushing. Subscribe. Drop your name and your city in the comments right now. Tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Tell me if you know a Dorothy. Tell me if you are a Dorothy. This community sees you, all of you. Now let me tell you what Gabriel did on the Monday after that Sunday call. Before Monday, I need to tell you about the 4 days between the termination and the phone call. Because those 4 days are the part of the story nobody sees, and they are the most important part. I went home on the morning of April the 9th and made tea. Not because tea solves anything, but because the ritual of making it is the specific physical activity of a person who needs to do something with her hands while her mind processes. I sat at my kitchen table and I thought about 22 years. I thought about Solomon, who died at 39 and never saw what Gabriel became. I have thought about what he would have said if he had seen it many times over the years, and I believe it would have been something simple and complete. The way Solomon said things, something like, I knew, I always knew. I thought about the apartment in the Bronx where I raised Gabriel. The kitchen table where I helped him with homework every evening after I came home from whatever building I had cleaned that day. Those evenings were tired in the body and fully present in the mind, because Gabriel's questions required presence, and I was not going to give him a tired mind just because my body was tired. I thought about the first time I saw Williams Tech's name in a technology publication. Gabriel had not told me about the company's profile. He was trying to protect me from worrying about the scale of what he was attempting, which is the mirror image of what I was doing with the cleaning. Two people protecting each other from the full picture of their lives. I have smiled about that privately many times. I thought about Harrington, not with anger, with the specific clarity of a woman who has thought about dignity for 22 years in the way that people who work in service think about dignity. That dignity is not something given to you by the room you are in or the job you hold or the person looking at you. Dignity is something you carry. It is internal and portable, and it does not require the permission or recognition of a man in an expensive suit who wants you out of his boardroom. And I thought about what I wanted. What I arrived at in those 4 days was this. I wanted Gabriel to know. Not because of what it would produce, not because of what he might do with the information, but because the carrying alone was finished. Because I had built what I built and it was standing, and my son was the CEO of a $600 million company, and I was 58 years old, and the protective purpose of the hiding was no longer the purpose it had been. It was time to be fully known. By my own child. That is why I told him. Not for the building. Not for what came after. For the being known. Gabriel called at 7:15 on Monday morning, not the Sunday pattern, which told me immediately that something was in motion. He spoke with the directness of someone who had been up thinking since before dawn. Mom, I need to tell you what I've done. His legal team had been spoken to the previous evening. The Meridian acquisition was closing Thursday. As of Thursday, he would be majority owner of the building's parent entity, full authority over the building's management contracts, including its facilities management. Then he said something I had not expected from him. I am not going to ask Gerald Pittman to reinstate you. I want to be clear about that. Good, I said immediately. What I am going to do is different. And I need to tell you before it happens because I want you to understand that none of what I am about to do is about revenge. Then what is it about? His answer was careful and considered and entirely his. It's about what I should have done 4 years ago, understood fully what my mother's life looked like and built something from that understanding rather than from my own guilt about it. You didn't know, I reminded him. I know. But Mom, I want to tell you something I have been carrying for a long time, and that your call last night made me understand I need to say out loud. Say it. I knew. The word landed in the room between us. Not specifically, he continued. Not the Meridian building, not Gerald Pittman, not the details. But I knew that the bookkeeping story was not the complete picture. I knew because I know you, and because the complete picture of your professional life has never been fully visible to me, and I chose not to press because pressing felt like it would cost you something. And I loved you too much to cost you something. We are the same person, Gabriel, I told him. Yes, he said quietly, I know that now. Then he laid out what was going to happen on Thursday, and I listened to every word. When he finished, I was still for a moment. That is too much, I finally said. Mom, it is too much and I want to say something about it. He waited. I didn't tell you so that you would do something, I said. I told you because it was time to be fully known. I don't need, he answered before I could finish. I know you don't need it. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because Williamstek needs what I'm building, and because the person most qualified to help me build it is you, and because your accounting degree from the University of Ghana and 22 years of managing the finances of your own household and raising me, and the specific intelligence that I have watched operate my entire life, should have been in a professional setting that recognized it decades ago. It wasn't. I cannot fix that. But I can fix what comes next. Gabriel. Say yes, Mom. A long pause. Then, what is the title? Director of Facilities Operations and Workforce Standards, which I am creating specifically because Williamstek has 11 offices and I have not paid sufficient attention to the conditions and standards in those offices and the people who maintain them. I need someone who understands that work from the inside to build the standards correctly. From the inside, I repeated, from 22 years of doing it. Yes. I need to ask you something, I told him. Anything. When you close this acquisition on Thursday, Meridian Corporate Tower, what happens to Gerald Pittman? Gerald will be offered the opportunity to continue in his role under new management with a revised management standard. The revision will make explicit the protections for contracted cleaning staff that are currently absent from the facility's management protocol. And Harrington? Gabriel's answer came measured and honest. Mr. Harrington is a tenant. His lease is month to month. And Mom, I am not terminating his lease out of spite. I want to be honest about that. If the only reason to end the tenancy was what he did to you, I would not end it, because that is not the kind of company I run, and it is not the kind of man I am. I know that, I said, because I do. But Mr. Harrington's company has been in arrears on its facilities fees for 3 months and has 2 open complaints from other tenants about after-hours noise from its suite. Those are legitimate grounds for non-renewal. Those grounds exist independent of Tuesday. I see, I said. And I did see, clearly, all of it. Gabriel Emmanuel Williams. Yes, your father would be so proud. The silence that followed was the specific kind that holds something too large for words. When he spoke again, his voice was steadier than I expected. I learned from you, Mom. Everything I know about how to build something that stands, I learned from watching you. The twist in this story is not the acquisition. I know some of you have been waiting for that to be the reversal, the satisfying moment when a woman fired from a building discovers her son then buys it. That is a reversal, and it is real, and I will not diminish it. But it is not the twist. The twist is about Gerald Pittman. On the Thursday of the acquisition closing, Gabriel and I walked into the Meridian Corporate Tower together. Through the front entrance, marble floors, reception desk, elevator bank to the executive floors. I want you to understand what that meant. 6 years of the service entrance, 6 years of the freight elevator, and then the front door. Together, the building manager met us at reception. Her eyes moved to me with the polite question of someone trying to understand the context of my presence. Gabriel answered it before she could ask. "This is my mother, Dorothy Williams. She will be joining Williams Tech as Director of Facilities Operations and Workforce Standards. She knows this building better than anyone you will introduce me to today." "Welcome, Mrs. Williams," she said. Of course. We went to the facilities office in the basement. Gerald Pittman was waiting. He looked at me when we walked in, and before a single word of introduction had been offered, before any context had been provided, he spoke directly to me. "Mrs. Williams, I owe you an apology." The words arrived without ceremony and without performance. "Gerald," I began. He continued with the steadiness of someone who had rehearsed this privately and needed to say it cleanly. "I have been thinking about Tuesday since Tuesday. What I did was not right. I had the authority to push back on Mr. Harrington's request, and I did not use it. You gave this building 6 years of exceptional work, and I signed a termination paper in 20 minutes because a tenant was unhappy. I am sorry." I accept that, I told him. Then he said something that showed he understood more than I had credited him with. "I did not know," he paused, looked at Gabriel, "I did not know who you were, who your son was." This is where I want you to pay attention, because what I said next is the part of the entire story that I am most proud of. "Gerald, I want to be clear about something. What you owed me on Tuesday had nothing to do with who my son is. You owed me the dignity of the 6 years of work I had given this building. That is what the apology is for. Not because of what is standing beside me today." He looked at me with the expression of a man receiving a correction he knew was right and had not quite had the courage to arrive at himself. "You're right," he said quietly. "I know you're right. I am sorry for Tuesday, Mrs. Williams, for its own reasons." "Thank you," I told him. And I meant it. That was the twist. Not that he apologized. That I was standing in that office capable of distinguishing between an apology that was owed for its own reasons and an apology produced by the presence of my son's position. 22 years had given me that distinction. The work had given me that clarity. I knew the difference between being seen because of what stands beside you and being seen for what you are. I insisted on the right one. That Thursday afternoon, after the building walk-through and the introductions and the transition meetings, Gabriel and I sat together in the boardroom on the 41st floor. Not because anything needed to be decided there. He had asked if I wanted to go in, and I had said yes without needing a reason. I sat in one of the 62 chairs. The table had been polished. The water pitchers were filled. The presentation screen was clean. Gabriel sat beside me, not at the head of the table, beside me. "How many times did you clean this room?" he asked, looking around at the space with new eyes. "Approximately 600 times. Tuesday and Friday for 6 years. He let that number sit in the air between us. Then, Mom. I need to ask you something I have been thinking about since Sunday. Ask it. When I was building the company in the early years, when the second startup had failed and I was figuring out whether to try again, you never once suggested I should stop. You never once said it might be time to try something safer. No, I never did. Why? Because I knew you would build it. I had been watching what you were made of for 34 years and I was certain. The question was never whether, only when. You never doubted it. I doubted it sometimes, I admitted. In the dark, privately, when the second startup failed and I could see how much it cost you. For approximately 3 days, I doubted. Then I watched you get up and start the analysis for the third attempt and the doubt was gone. 3 days, he repeated, and there was something almost like wonder in his voice. Then you showed me why it was not warranted. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't know you were watching that closely. Mothers always watch that closely. You just don't always know. He looked at the table, at the room, at the windows. Then he said, I want to tell you something about this building. Tell me. The acquisition was already in motion before Sunday. 4 months of negotiations and due diligence. I don't want you to think I bought a building because of what happened to you. I know, I said simply. But something changed on Sunday. Something about how I understood what the acquisition was for. I had been thinking about it as a real estate and infrastructure play. After Sunday, I understood something else. That the buildings we own and the people who maintain them are the same infrastructure. That the cleaning staff and the facilities workers and the people who push carts through service entrances and take freight elevators are the infrastructure of every building I will ever own. And that I have not been building standards for those people the way I build standards for my technology infrastructure. That needs to change. Yes, it does. That's what the director role is for, not to give you something. To use what you know to build something that should have been built already. I know that, I said. Will you help me build it? Yes. He stood and extended his hand with the slight formality of someone completing a significant professional agreement, and I looked at that hand for a full 3 seconds. Gabriel Emmanuel Williams. I changed every diaper. I am not shaking your hand. He laughed. The specific laugh of a 34-year-old man who has just been reminded that no matter what he builds, his mother was there before the building started. I stood up and hugged him the way I have hugged him since he was 7 years old and Solomon died, and it was the two of us all the way with everything. He hugged me back the same way. Then I said, I want to show you something. He followed me to the far end of the room, to the floor-to-ceiling windows. This is where I was when he came in, I told Gabriel, on my knees, finishing this. He looked at the baseboard along the window wall for a long moment. It's perfect, he said. Yes, I agreed. It always was. The role of Director of Facilities, Operations, and Workforce Standards at Williams Tech Global was announced internally on the 1st of May. The announcement included a brief professional biography describing my 22 years of commercial facilities work, my accounting degree from the University of Ghana, and my new responsibilities overseeing standards and workforce protocols for all 11 of Williams Tech's global office locations. It also included a line that Gabriel had insisted on, that I had tried to remove, and that he had put back 3 times. Dorothy Williams has spent 22 years maintaining the professional environments where others do their work. She understands the infrastructure of building from the inside. That understanding is exactly what Williams Tech needs to build its own standards correctly. I tried to remove it because it felt like too much. He put it back because he said the accurate description of a qualification is not embellishment, it is accuracy. He is his mother's son. In the first 60 days of the role, I visited all 11 offices, 2 to 3 days at each location. I met with facilities staff, cleaning contractors, building management teams. I asked questions and listened to the answers and took notes the way I have always taken notes, thoroughly. What I found in those 11 offices was what I had expected and what I think Gabriel suspected I would find. The people who maintained the physical environments where Williams Tech's technology employees worked were operating without the standards documentation, training support, workforce protections, and professional recognition that Williams Tech applied to every other category of its operations. The gap was not malicious. It was the specific gap that forms when an organization is built rapidly by people who know technology and who have not been required to think carefully about the infrastructure underneath it, because the people who fill that gap have not had the voice to require it. I wrote the standards document, all of it, 112 pages. It took 4 months. It covered every category. Cleaning protocols and their rationale, equipment standards, scheduling frameworks that protected workers from the kind of early morning arrival conflicts that had produced my own termination, wage standards, grievance procedures, training documentation, and a professional recognition framework that gave facilities workers the kind of formal acknowledgement of their contribution that, in 22 years of doing this work, I had never seen in any building I had ever cleaned. Gabriel reviewed every page. He approved the document in full. It went into effect across all 11 offices on the first day of November. The document has a cover page. The cover page reads, Williams Tech Global Facilities Operations and Workforce Standards, developed by Dorothy A. Williams, Director of Facilities Operations and Workforce Standards. My name on the cover page. Of a document that governs how the people who push carts through service entrances of buildings I helped build are treated. My name. Harrington's company lease was not renewed in May, when its month-to-month agreement came up for review. The grounds were the arrears and the noise complaints, legitimate and documented, handled through the standard process by the building's legal team. He vacated his suite on May 31st. I was at the Meridian Corporate Tower that day for a facilities review meeting. I did not see him leave. I did not arrange to see him leave. The departure of a former tenant is not something I had any involvement in or interest in managing. What I know is that his suite on the 38th floor was cleaned by the building's contracted cleaning staff on June 1st, conducted according to the new tenant preparation standards I had drafted as part of the Williams Tech Building Management Protocol, with the full protections and recognition that the protocol provides. That is the whole of my justice in that direction. It is sufficient. There is a broader thing now. The thing this story means outside of the building and the boardroom and the 112 pages. There is a specific invisibility applied to the work of maintenance. not the invisibility of darkness or obscurity, the specific social invisibility of work that everyone depends on and that most people have quietly decided does not require the same quality of attention as the work that happens at the conference table rather than underneath it. For 22 years, I pushed carts through service entrances. For 22 years, I was Dorothy, the cleaning lady in rooms where the people who used those rooms did not know my name and did not need to know it, because the room being clean was the outcome, and I was simply the mechanism of the outcome. The room being clean is not magic. It is not self-generating. It is the product of specific knowledge and specific skill and specific physical labor and specific professional discipline, applied by a specific person who arrived before you did and will be there after you leave. I know how to clean a boardroom in the dark before the sun comes up. I also know how to build a 112-page standards document that changes how 11 offices treat the people who do that cleaning. These are not different kinds of knowledge. They are the same knowledge applied at different scales. The scale changed because of Gabriel, but the knowledge was always mine. I was always more than what the room decided I was. Harrington looked at a woman on her knees cleaning a baseboard and saw an inconvenience. He did not see 22 years of showing up. He did not see the sun. He did not see the folder on the laptop. He did not see the accounting degree that America decided not to recognize. He did not see the woman who sat at a kitchen table every evening after 12 hours of cleaning and helped a 7-year-old with his homework because that child's mind was moving at a speed that required presence, and she was not going to give him a tired mind just because her body was tired. He saw a cleaning woman who was still in the room. The failure of his vision was never my problem. It was never my problem to carry. I put it down on the bus home, called my son on Sunday. The rest is what you have heard. Gabriel and I have dinner every Sunday now. Not the phone call, the dinner. He is in New York every 2 weeks for board meetings, and I am in New York full-time. And on the Sundays when he is in the city, we sit at a restaurant in the West Village that he found, and that I pretend to have opinions about the wine selection at, even though I do not drink wine and my opinions are entirely constructed to participate in the ritual. He tells me about the company. I tell him about the standards work. We talk about Solomon sometimes, about what he would have said if he had seen all of this. I believe it would have been something simple and complete in the way Solomon said things. Gabriel agrees with my version of what it would have been. My apartment in the Bronx is the same apartment. I have not moved. It is where I raised Gabriel, where I sat at the kitchen table, where I came home to for 22 years, and it is not a place I need to leave in order to be somewhere good. I will leave it when I am ready, and I will know when that is. The folder on my laptop has been updated. It has the May 1st announcement and the standards document and a photograph from the walk-through of the Meridian Corporate Tower on the Thursday of the acquisition closing. In the photograph, Gabriel and I are standing in the lobby, not in the boardroom on the 41st floor. In the lobby, the front entrance with the marble floors and the elevator bank. He is in his dark suit. I am in a blue dress I bought the week before because I knew I was going in through the front entrance and I wanted the dress to be right for that. We are not performing anything. We are simply standing there, both of us, in the lobby of a building that is his, a building I cleaned for 6 years, a lobby I was never meant to enter through the front. And we are both looking at the camera with the same expression, which is not pride exactly. It is simply the expression of two people who have arrived somewhere true. Subscribe to Black Diamonds right now. This channel is built for Dorothy. For every woman who took the freight elevator for 22 years whose name belongs on a cover page. For every mother who built in the dark so her child could build in the light. For everyone who has ever been looked at on their knees cleaning a baseboard and seen as less than what they are. Subscribe, hit the bell, drop your name and your city in the comments below. Tell me where in the world you are watching from tonight. Tell me if you are a Dorothy. Tell me if you know one. Tell me if you have a Gabriel. Drop a heart if you believe that the work done before the sun comes up matters. Drop a heart if you believe that what a person carries is not always visible in the room they are standing in. Drop a heart if you have ever been looked at and not seen. Drop a heart for Solomon, who died at 39 and never saw it but knew. Drop a heart for Gabriel, who bought the building and walked his mother through the front door. Drop a heart for the baseboard along the floor to ceiling windows on the 41st floor. Drop a heart for the folder on the laptop with everything in it since the beginning. Drop a heart for every cleaning cart that was ever pushed through a service entrance by a woman who was more than the room decided she was. This is Black Diamonds. We see you. We have always seen you. Next week on Black Diamonds, a woman who signed her name on 16 years of business records as a silent partner, who attended every board meeting as a guest and never as a member, who discovered on the morning her husband filed to dissolve the company that the intellectual property at the center of the business, the methodology she developed, the framework she built, the process that generated 80% of the company's revenue, had been registered in his name alone. What her intellectual property attorney found when she traced the registration timeline. What the judge said when she saw the founding documents. And what the company's 3 largest clients did when they found out who had actually built what they had been paying for. That story is coming. Make sure your notifications are on. Because what those clients decided when they read the filing changed everything about what happened next. Until then, this is Black Diamonds. We see you. We have always seen you.